Hi, I'm James, a growth executive. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about succession planning. I had 3 client meetings in the last 2 days, and these are some of the stories that I heard. Number one, the executive director has just given his board a 3-year notice that he would like to retire, and the executive director role will be vacated. So the board is asking him to put together a succession plan, particularly to take his operations person and promote and bring him up to speed to take his role. Now, 3 years is a very generous retirement notification. So kudos to him. So now the question is, what does it look like to systematically build in leadership development processes? How does he write down the core, what I call MITs, or the most important things that he does as an executive? How does he think in these terms? And how do we move someone who's operationally minded, who might be really good at their job as an integrator operator, like doing the day to day, but how do we get him to start thinking more strategically and managing up? Because managing up into the board and thinking more strategically long term as a visionary, as an executive director, directing the work of the organization is a lot different than what he's used to doing now in his operational role. So how do we do that well? So that's what we're working on with that client. The second client I talked to is a gentleman who has, again, by the board's order, I've been identified, hey, I'm going to retire. Eventually, I need to replace myself. So he went to 2 mid-level managers and communicated to them, hey, I think one of you would be great. Let's figure out what this looks like. And it came in a week later. One of them had resigned, and the other one's like not wanting the role. It's scary because it's not very well defined. They see the hot seat that he's in, and they're like, we're quite happy in our mid-level position. That, not their words, mine. Not so sure I want to do that job. No thanks. Right. So now what's he need to do to address that with bringing in somebody from the outside potentially? Right. And then the third, and it's kind of a sad situation, but my good friend David, client I've worked with for many years, was in a car accident around Thanksgiving last year and was in the hospital for 6 weeks, completely unable to fulfill his role as a leader in his organization. So his operational team had to scramble, figure some things out. And the board, coming back from that event, said, you have got to make sure we've got some redundancy, that there's some folks in the team that can step into that role, because there was several weeks there where things just were not happening. And the organization was basically confronted with the reality, hey, if we lose our executive director, we're in a lot of trouble, right? So succession planning from 3 years out, short term, mid-level management, how do we bring them up? What is the role of an executive director? What are my most important things? And how do I think about it in a systematic way? So in this coming month out, I am bringing in someone who wrote the book literally on succession planning. We're going to have them speak to this to our group. I will distill that into videos for our coaching clients to watch. And then we will begin to build out a systematic playbook, if you would, that we can then start to plan out a long-term view of how do we build some redundancy in this organization? How do we do proper succession planning? What does it look like to pass the mantle as the leader so that this organization can go on for many, many years beyond our individual, especially as a founder, beyond our individual contribution as the founder, as the leader, as the day's executive. My one client has been executive for 30 years. That's a long time. Big shoes to fill, is it not? I'm James at the Growth Executive. Feel free to join me for the next workshop. We will work through a strategic plan like this. The key initiative for those 3 executives will be, hey, succession planning. That's what we need to talk about. That's what I need to be working on. I owe the board a plan. How does that work? Let's get it done. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm James at thegrowthexecutive.com. Have a fantastic day. Bye-bye now.